Dude, I hit the thing. We're going live on YouTube. Sorry. The freaking any second now.
Not any second. We're live.
We're live.
Yeah. All right.
Take
it away, Kevin.
Hey, everybody. Today is Thursday, June 21st. And
No, you're a liar. It's June 17th.
Oh, is it June 17th? Oh, that's next week. That's right.
The 21st is a Monday.
By the way, are we sure this isn't episode 26 again? Because we have a couple of those.
This is 28.
Okay. Act like you've been here before, Kev. Come on.
Yeah. My mouse is crapped out, so we're having all kinds of technical difficulties.
All right, let's try this again. Ready?
2, 3, go. So today is June. What is it, Ryan?
The 17th.
Right. My kids actually have off from school tomorrow because apparently there's a new national holiday tomorrow. So today's podcast is titled "Travel Ball: Is it cookie cutter for development?" We shall see.
Okay.
Without further ado, my co-host, Mike Ferry.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Prove It Live podcast. I'm Mike Ferry. And I just got reminded that the meeting is being recorded. I'm going to hit continue. Welcome to the Prove It Live podcast.
What are we doing here?
I know. I'm Mike Ferry from the Farm Baseball Performance Institute, along with the aforementioned Dr. Kevin McGovern of Perfect Motion Sports Therapy and our producer extraordinaire, Ryan Gagney.
Well, look, I didn't take over the duties that Kevin has because he
said duties.
Dude, the bat. Listen, when the batteries wear out, you're done. When the charger goes to your iPhone, you're done. It's not my problem. Sorry. Yeah, right. When things are hooked up by wires, we didn't have these problems. But now everything's wireless. One thing goes wrong, and everything goes wrong.
Okay. Sure enough. Anyway,
moving on.
Hey, Ryan, let's just go. What's the top of the order for today?
We're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to talk about Tyler Glasnow's comments on his injury that he is now blaming on the MLB quote unquote rules change. I use quote unquote into quotations there because the rules change. It wasn't a changing of the rules. They're just starting to enforce a rule that's already been in the game. We're going to check in on the Atlantic League rules changes that we talked about before the season. And we're going to talk about some pitch smart rules for Little League and travel baseball arm care. Again, I'll use that in quotations as well.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, top of the order, right? So Glasnow. So I got kind of an issue with what he's doing. I do have an issue with what he's doing.
Kind of issue do you have?
This is the issue I have. First of all, to blame Major League Baseball that they're going to enforce a rule that you can't doctor the baseball. Okay, that's not new. They're like won't even let us put stuff on the ball. Like you've never been able to do that. All right, it's been illegal the whole time. Now, whether it was enforced or not is something else. And we talked about it before. This for so long. I mean, there's been situations where first baseman, would have something on their glove. So when the pitcher picked off, the first baseman rubbed it out so the pitcher wouldn't get in trouble, wouldn't be on his body. Third baseman when they go around the horn, etc. They've had stuff inside their like the belt line of their pants, the lid of their cap, on the wrist, all this different stuff. You have a rosin bag. That's illegal. Okay. You have a rosin bag, right? I mean, so I don't understand why, just because people are getting caught with it. And here's the other thing, the whole obsession with the spin rate. And by the way, I'm a bit obsessed with it too. And I say obsessed only because it's a really important metric that we didn't know for so long. So it's like this newfound thing and it's fun. But since they've, come out and said no more sticky stuff on baseballs, no spider tack or whatever, the spin rates have plummeted around baseball. So clearly everyone was doing this. And look, whenever a batter has an advantage over a pitcher, pitchers like all hell breaks loose. Like they're up in arms, right? And so what? Like all of a sudden, it comes back to you and, the sky is falling. And one of the things he said too, guys, is, and I had it written he's talking about he has to so I got to grip the crap out of the baseball now. And I'm like, well, first of all, no, you don't. No, you don't. Number one. Number two, sorry you have to pitch legally. Sorry. Yep. I mean, it's just absurd
What he said was, I switched my fastball grip and my curveball grip. I had to put my fastball deeper into my hand and grip it way harder. Instead of holding my curveball at the tip of my fingers, I had to dig it deeper into my hand. I'm choking the blank out of all my pitches.
And that's stupid. God, Kevin.
Which will cause, tension in that form of gripping a ball will cause flexor tendon issues. But if you look at his mechanics, the arm is like at second. He's a righty, right? The arm is at second base, and his hips are all the way through the ball. The arm is lagging, even though some coaches out there say that arm lag is not happening.
Doesn't exist.
Even though I see it. So he's throwing the ball against gravity, and gravity will win every single time.
Right.
And gravity is winning. If we just look again, if we talk about, we had another Met pitcher, same guy, go down again. With DeGrom came out of the second straight game with an injury yesterday, and of course the Mets are saying everything's fine. Then pitch if everything's fine.
Right.
So, I agree with the fact that we talked about this prior to the show about, when you see the whites of your knuckles, right? That's an indication that there's lots of tension there and you're gripping something too tightly and, you're violating a kinesiological rule or law there. And you are potentially more at risk for injury.
Without question.
But again, to say that the only way to do it in a healthy manner is by adding substances to the baseball is just absurd. It's absurd. Were you using spider tack when you were in high school? Were you using spider tack? In the minors, maybe he was, but you didn't get drafted or recruited, using that stuff. And if you did, then shame on you. You should have known that there's maybe an end, an end to that ride. You have to know. It's pretty basic. So it's I think two things. It's this, this obsession with the spin rate, and there's pitchers out there, Kevin, that they're throwing ridiculous breaking stuff now, like ridiculous stuff. I forget who it was, and it was last week, but it was a highlight, and it might have been Bauer, but dude, this thing broke like 1.5 feet easy,
like a wiffle ball.
More than that.
Boomerang.
Yeah, it went from probably a couple inches off the inner half of the plate to 3-4 inches to the outer half of the plate. You already have advantages. By the way, they try to help the pitchers by raising the seams this year. Don't forget, they're trying to help the defense. And how many advantages do you need? That's what I want to know. But and if this really does have a relationship to injury or some hurt arms, then MLB has to look at that. But Kevin, as you mentioned, I saw the picture, on the article, the first article that pulls up when you say, Glasnow, blame staff. It's a picture of him, and like you said, his arm is. It's like
back here. Yeah,
there's no. He's got way more to worry about than not having sticky stuff.
Right. So it's his mechanics, and the staff, I guess, portion of it. Are you allowing these mechanics to continue? Every single person from this year, every single person from the last 10 years who has had a shoulder or Tommy John injury, they are accelerating the ball against gravity. Plain and simple. That's it.
Right. And if when they get hurt, when they come back, they're not fixing the origin of the problem. They're not helping to fix somebody's arm pass so they don't do it again. They just, hey, you healthy again? Okay. And back out there they go, the same type of. Now there have been people over the course of history, especially recent history, that have changed their arm path, shortened up, things like that. But it seemed like it was actually starting to trend, sort of in the, I don't know, I would say the early part of the 2000s, like 2007, 2008. And I remember being excited because a few people had changed. And I remember one was a local guy, Manny Del Carmen. And I was excited that, all right, they think they're starting to get this. And at the time, there were organizations who understood that you can't be so long back here. But that seemed to have come and just gone away.
Well, you've got two major training facilities, one here on the East Coast and one out in the West Coast, that literally will say, yeah, I mean, if you throw max effort and try to throw 99 miles an hour, injuries will happen. What?
Yep.
And people say, oh, okay.
Well, because they just kind of sit on the idea that throwing's an unnatural thing. It's an unnatural motion, so you're going to get hurt just no matter when. And of course, we don't believe that. I mean, people have been overhand throwing basically since the dawn of time, right? Since
tennis. I go back to tennis. I go back to volleyball. It's still the same movement. Okay.
Right.
It's still the same thing. Okay.
Right.
All right. Rafael Nadal isn't leaving Wimbledon because he's got Tommy John pain. His knees and hips are beaten up from all the pounding. Right. So it's not. And they serve hundreds and hundreds of times a week.
So that kind of leads us to the next thing, which is, this cookie cutter mentality that exists out there too. And that's really our main topic is, cookie cutter, when it's good, when it's bad. It's mostly bad, to save you the suspense. But there are times when it's not a bad thing. I think of hitting, for instance, right? And I've heard people say, there's hundreds and thousands of ways to hit a baseball. Well, yeah, sure, but not the right way. Right. I mean, if you want to do it the right way, if you look at major league hitters, not just now, but go back 50 years, all of them are going to have very similar consistencies and certain things. One is their sequence. They're going to use their legs and their core to swing. They're not going to use their arms. What they look like at contact, right? How their load positions after they step. Remember, stances are snowflakes. Load positions aren't. They're all like nearly identical. So in that sense, cookie cutter, if you want to call it that, cookie cutter, it's important. Now, when it comes to approach and playing to the real strengths of that hitter, you got to get away from cookie cutter. But in terms of the mechanical swing, I'm sort of for it. But that can't be across the board. And what we're seeing, Kevin, is like, what bothers me the most. And Ryan, I want to ask you in a second about, you had a situation relating to this, or you have one coming up, I should say, is the cookie cutter way in which we're handling, like we said, the pitchers and injuries and the pitch count. And, I say it ad nauseum, but you pitched yesterday, don't throw a ball, don't pick up a ball tomorrow, whatever. How, and let's look at it this way. How can a 17-year-old high school player, okay, or why should a 17-year-old high school player who maybe gets, how many starts do they get a year? 7, 8? In a regular high school season ish, right?
Okay. If that, yeah.
All right. 7. How are they on the exact same pitch count platform as Garrett Cole? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And they're using the same guidelines. The kid's obviously way less mature. He's not physically strong like Garrett Cole is. It's not his job. He doesn't work out his entire life as a career.
Doesn't have any kind of the sports medicine stuff that Garrett Cole has.
Correct. No, and most of those kids aren't going to get the arm care. They're not going to get any of that stuff. Yet the pitch count rules are going to be nearly identical. Doesn't make sense. And by the way, that goes down to like 14 and 13 U players.
Mm-hmm.
What? And I would argue that it shouldn't be the same for each player at the same age, at the same experience level, right? It's going to determine what are the mechanics like. Again, it's this idea of we have a formula that's going to help save you. It's going to keep you from hurting your arm. And it's not. And it's not even coming close.
Nope.
In fact, they're going up still. And so it blows my mind. And I think we're in that sort of cookie cutter mindset, and whatever the fad or trend is, we get wrapped up in it, And I mean, what's your take, Kevin? I mean,
I don't, you and I are from the same generation. We threw all the time, we pitched, we threw, we played rundown, we threw the ball against the brick wall. We threw tennis balls, we threw wiffle balls, but we were outside doing something every single day, moving. Kids today, first of all, do not do that. We can go to any park right now and say it's a beautiful summer day. I can guarantee from the drive from Acton to Waltham, if you see one kid out in a park doing something, it would be one more than expected.
Yep.
No one's outside. They're not doing anything. They're not learning how to throw. They're not moving. So they're not building up any tolerance. So when they do go, it's all max effort. Everything is max effort. We get on the field and try to throw it as hard as I can, through the catcher, and the body just can't take that kind of stuff. It needs to incrementally build up, and it's just not happening. You go from little league to nothing. Like there's no playing. There's no different types of throwing. And again, this goes back to the kids just playing maybe one sport, and they're not getting cross trained. They're not playing tennis. They're not playing basketball. All of that factors into why there are so many injuries, and the injuries are skyrocketing.
Yep.
And we're just really hearing about the injuries. Let's be honest, that are in Major League Baseball.
Right.
I mean, I've been seeing tweets about like the Arkansas baseball team, like their pitching staff decimated. I work with someone from Coastal Carolina, pitching staff decimated. We don't hear about those. We don't just hear about the guys who have made it. There are hundreds of thousands of injuries of people who haven't made it.
Yeah, there's a reason why, the bigger programs recruit so many players, and it's because they just know that some are going to get hurt. They have to have people waiting there in the wings.
Right.
So to see how, in my opinion, how silly some of this stuff is, Ryan, do you have the pitch rules for this weekend?
I do.
All right. So by the way, so this is for 13U travel baseball. Okay. AAU, as a lot of people call it. I can't stand that stigma, but it is.
Pay you. Yes.
Yep.
Play you, whatever.
So what are the rules, Ryan? So if a pitcher plays today?
These are done by Pitch Smart, which is in cooperation with USA Baseball and Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So take that for what it's worth. Pitch Smart.
We look them up.
So they have a couple different brackets. They have 7 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12, 13 to 14, 15 to 16, 17 to 18, right? I coach a 13U team, okay? My coach is a 14U team. So this rule right here applies for both of our teams this weekend in our playoff scenario. At 13 or 14 years old, they are allowed to throw 95 pitches in a day. That's the maximum amount of pitches that they're allowed to throw. If they were to throw only 1 to 20 pitches, they don't need any rest. They can pitch again the next day. If they throw 21 to 35 pitches, they need 1 day rest. 36 to 50, they need 2 days rest. 51 to 65, 3 days rest, and anything over 66 pitches, they are required to have 4 days of rest.
So let's think about that for a second.
Right,
okay?
well, has anyone looked at this site? Has anyone looked at this site, this Pitch Smart site?
Yeah, let's
open it up.
Yeah.
Let's look. I think everyone listening to this should look this up. Your first person who's talking about on Pitch Smart, the first human being, is a guy who derives his income from Tommy John and shoulder surgeries.
Pitch Smart's his program. He's created it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
He created it. So, and look, I want to be honest. In my opinion, it's an effort. I personally don't think anyone's trying to get anybody hurt. I don't think that's, and I would really like to believe that that's true. And again, but I mean, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we don't, scrutinize it a little bit, I mean, because again, the injuries are going up. And by the way, this pitch smart chart, this hasn't changed in years. I don't know if you can find, Kevin, when it started there, but so let's say, 95 is your max for the day. Yet if you throw 66 pitches or 68 pitches, you need 4 full days of rest. That's the same amount of rest that someone on a 5-man rotation would get in the big leagues. Okay. So if 66 requires 4 days rest, then why should 95 be the 1 day limit? That's my first question. Second, okay, I have a pitcher throwing, and this is where we're getting in. I think we're getting into trouble at the youth level, and I'll explain. 1 to 20, no days of rest. So a coach, I'm a little league coach out there, and I say, well, we have another game tomorrow, and I'm probably going to need Johnny tomorrow too. So let's keep a strict pitch count. Let me know when he gets to 20 on the nose, and we're going to take him out. Why? Well, because if he throws a 21st pitch, he needs a full day off. He can't pitch for me tomorrow. But 20, he can. And so he can come out, and I don't think, is there a limit on how many he can throw the next day? It's just a reset, right? So he can throw as many as 95 pitches, right? It resets. So, you can get 40. Okay. Let's say cop him at 20 again. They have a game the next day. The next day you get the point here. You can have this kid throw 4 days in a row for a combined, pitch count of 80 pitches and 4 days. And that is too much. Okay. Then
Not to mention, he could still that next day throw another 95 pitches.
That's right.
Right.
But if you keep him to
So you're
20, then
talking
you can
about-
throw him again.
Right.
So also on this site, it says risk factors for injury. Not one of them says mechanics.
I know.
Not one.
I know.
Not it says I can read them to you. Overuse, showcases, so you're blaming the showcase. Throwing curveballs and sliders, pitcher catcher athletes, velocity, mound height and pitching distance, and single sport specialization. Those are the risk factors. In a sport that requires precise mechanics to stay healthy, you don't list it in your top 8 here that's here.
Not only do you need good mechanics, you need good repeatable mechanics.
Absolutely.
Super important. Okay. And so just to stay on this for a second, again, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, just at my facility, and say, these aren't really made for us. We people who do this are a living. We're in this every single day. We know what we're doing. Again, is best as anybody. I don't claim to be, super experts at it or masters at it, because this is obviously something that we're all trying to figure out because of, again, the injuries keep going up. But, I'll rephrase it this way. We put tons and tons of thought into this, and we really try to use the most, logic and reason, and apply that to our athletes. Our athletes come first. Okay. So, but let's say I'm not. Let's say that I coach Little League, and it's just something I do. I'm volunteering my time. I want to do something that's with my son or my daughter. Maybe it's softball. This really more applies to baseball because it's overhand pitching. But I'm gonna go by this list. I'm gonna go by this because it's from a very credible person, right? That's a very well-known, credible person, and it's pretty universal. It's supported by USA Baseball, and again, Ryan, I think
it has a Major League Baseball stamp on it too.
Major League Baseball, and so for sure. Now, again, this is probably how this is a somewhat of a guideline, at least something that they use as a base at the major league level, and they're asking you to do the same for your 11-year-old son, okay, with open growth plates and no experience and probably awful mechanics, etc. Right?
And apparently, according to what I'm looking at here, no legs.
No legs.
So parents, any program that requires you to throw a baseball from your knees, run as fast as you can away. Fast. That is absolutely insane. Everything here on their 4-week sample throwing progression for a 12-year-old has a minimum of 10 throws per day on the person's knees.
Yeah.
So right then and there, you do not know how force and mechanics are generated if you're having someone throw from their knees.
Right.
Just have them go out there on a folding chair and sit in the mound and throw from there. Why?
Right.
That's insane.
Yep. I mean, I agree. And especially at max effort, like, if you're on your knees doing wrist flips or whatever, that's fine.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Right. So again, all of this stuff with pitch count, again, days of rest in between, and it seems scientific. It appears scientific, but it's not, because
it's not working.
Right.
The results are just not there.
But the scientific process says we try this, and if it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board, we try something new, and that's not happening.
No,
it's not happening. This is staying out there. Instead, the blame gets thrown at, travel programs because they overpitch kids. And I know, and not just us, lots of programs don't. They'll be the ones that actually try to protect that kid and say, we'll pay attention to where you're throwing elsewhere, and we'll make sure we'll take the hit. We'll have you sit and not throw. Now, again, not even saying that that's really the answer, right? But what the information that we're given on a daily basis is, it seems that, rest is obviously important. We believe it is. But again, having a system where you can throw 20 pitches, right? Don't throw the 21st, that requires a day of rest. Throw that kid the next day, another 20 pitches, take him out, avoid that 21st. He can pitch the next day, 20 pitches in on that fourth day, 95 or 50, whatever, right?
That's
and again,
insane.
And so they're not factoring the most important thing. And this is my biggest gripe with baseball in general, is nobody is talking about the one glaringly obvious thing to us, which is poor throwing mechanics, disconnecting the arm from the body, not using the legs and the core, making the arm too long so it's being pulled behind rather than going along for the ride, being a conduit of the energy rather than a conductor of the energy.
And
so it's supposed to be.
And performance, meaning not just velocity. If you're a 1-to-1 strike the ball ratio, get him out of the game. His mechanics are full. I mean, you have got, as a pitcher, you should be able to throw strikes. A minimum of 2-to-1. If it's 1-to-1 or even less, that you're throwing more balls than strikes, get them out of the game because their mechanics are off and they can't throw strikes, and they're going to continually try to throw harder to throw more strikes, and it's not going to work. And you'll see kids, he threw 80 pitches, 40 strikes. What? 7 walks. That there's a problem there. And sure enough, that will be the kid that will get injured quicker.
And so I think, and to pull this back to, this is the thing that we're talking about there, this pitch smart, and I'm pretty sure that's pretty much what everyone goes by, right? I don't even know if there's a competing theory out there that anyone pays any attention to, right? If there is, I don't know what it is, and I know it's not prevalent, that's for sure. So pretty much everybody goes by this. Tournaments, I've seen tournaments that we go to, they go by this pitch smart chart. Leagues will go by this for their playoffs, etc. So every little league I know uses this. And again, it's the epitome of cookie cutter. This is a cookie cutter solution to something that absolutely can't afford to be cookie cutter. Throwing a baseball, right? Throwing a softball, throwing in general. Okay. You'll see everything. Now, will you see variances in swings of major leaguers? Sure you will. Okay. Most of them come at the finish, maybe the very first move to when their step or whatever. But again, all the important parts, the important constants are the same. Now with pitching, you have all types of different release points, right? It's like a clock. This is righties and this is lefties over here, right? It's like this big arcing like semicircle. And then where the elbow is in release, right? Elbow forward or elbow to the side, which is another thing, right? You get some pitchers that throw their elbow to the side, some pitchers they throw their elbows forward, and so on and so forth. There's so many different variations. And by the way, a lot of those variations could be injurious in and of themselves, right? As we talked about. But yeah, I really wish that as a sport, we would start paying attention to the one thing that Kevin mentioned wasn't on this website, and you do not hear talked about enough is arm mechanics, the mechanics and the body mechanics go along with it, where the arm is in certain positions, because clearly there's disconnects, this kinesiological disconnects that are putting throwers in harm's way. Just today, would we say who came out of a game yesterday? DeGrom, right?
Second one in a row.
Right. Syndergaard's already down. DeGrom comes out second game in a row. We got Chris Sale still not back. We've got
didn't throw a bullpen on Tuesday though.
Woo!
Yeah, right, but that was supposed to be like 3 weeks ago, right?
Severino's still out. Syndergaard Syndergaard shut down, I guess, for another month at least. So, I mean, these guys won't be back till 2 years after Tommy John surgery.
And I know we have to move on, but the last thing I'll just say is that, we did an episode a couple episodes back, and we talked about the injury rate and how many people are injured. I really don't know this. I don't have, probably should have looked at it first. But I'd be willing to bet that a large chunk, a disproportionate chunk of those injuries are pitchers. Disproportionate,
without question.
And so this is a problem. And instead of, and I don't know why the mechanics aren't looked at. It blows my mind, and why it's not discussed. But I know that's the approach that we try to take.
Well, yeah, I mean, here it is. Here's your Major League Baseball sponsored pitch, and there's not one. Mechanics I've been looking here, and everyone on the advisory committee, pretty much 80% of them are orthopedic surgeons, which is another problem. But there's nothing. Compliance program, risk factors, maximize performance. Nothing talks about mechanics.
And the risk factors. How is a showcase a risk factor?
This should be thrown.
Explain that to me.
Just delete this site from your bookmarks. It's useless.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. None whatsoever. And by the way, and I'm not saying this is the answer. Okay, I'm not saying this is the right way either. But I will say this, right? And I'm talking. And I forget what it was on social media, Instagram or Facebook or somewhere. There was a post about Nolan Ryan. There was the anniversary. It says 35 years ago today, Nolan Ryan threw 235 pitches in a 13-inning complete game victory, striking out 19. Okay. Now, I don't know what age that puts him at. But I can tell you around that same time, within that same season or within a season or two from there, Ryan had looked it up. He had, think, 32 starts, 26 complete games. Okay. And again, I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I don't know. What I do know is that injuries were not nearly as prevalent in that era as it is now. And by the way, that 26 complete games, that wasn't just Nolan Ryan. Lots of guys. So again, not saying that that's the answer, but whatever we're doing now is not the answer either. And I think we really need to work at it. And we do have to take a look at, what the theories and beliefs were, or what the pitchers were doing back in, that generation.
I just
39 games started, 41 games pitched in, 26 complete games, 326 innings.
Yeah.
That'll never be touched.
And 383 strikeouts.
Of course.
Yeah. And he came in second in the Cy Young voting that year, which is banana land. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
So I have to read you a partial quote from this site from someone. Tommy John surgery has both extended and resurrected the careers of many of our players, and the science of medicine has been an incredible boom to our game. With that said, we shouldn't get, we should.
And by the way, it has in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
Again, we talked about
general manager, Oakland A's.
Yeah.
Billy Beane said that.
Well, and so that's interesting. That's Billy Beane, because I don't know how about much of the medical field science he's talking about, because he is a very science-minded individual, mathematical individual, but and rightfully so. But again, science has done, and it's really more technology, I think, right? Which is understanding what spin rate does to a batted ball, etc., pitch ball, and so on and so forth. And it's probably made guys stronger. They're probably more agile, stronger athletes these days, but the risk of injury is so alarming. And I know we talk about it a lot because it's one of the big things that we do here in this podcast. But anyway,
that site, that's alarming to me. That site.
All right.
So, Michael, we have some questions of the week.
Yeah, are we going to do your movement first, or are we going to hit?
No, I think we need. I think this is from this came live to me this morning. I think this is like a hot topic. Topic. All right, so this is a very concerned. This comes from a very concerned parent whose child is in a competitive pay-you program. I like to call it that.
I picked up on that.
Yeah, and she is obviously. I could feel her typing this question. She's not happy.
Mm-hmm.
No, but just just definitely can feel it coming through the phone here. So
I've been there.
I'm gonna give you some of these, and if you can answer them to the best of your ability, I know I would appreciate it, and so would she. Okay.
Alrighty.
So the question one, all right, is there a benefit or detriment for being in AU, town, and high school or middle school baseball?
Yes. The answer is yes. There is a benefit and a detriment to that. So a benefit, let's look at the benefit first. Okay. Now my answer off the top is going to be it's the negative outweighs the positive, but I'll explain the positives. The positives are if you are a position player, you're not a pitcher, you get more at-bats, right? You're getting a lot of at-bats. That's really the only positive. You get more and more reps in the field, of course, too. You get more ground balls if you're a shortstop, more fly balls if you're an outfielder. So you're just getting more overall play. Now, the negative to that is many. Okay, so the first negative is I'm going to contradict what I just said. All those reps that you just added, if your mechanics are not really where they need to be, you're reinforcing a bad mechanic. Every swing is one swing closer to you being your permanent swing, and every time you feel the ball, ditto. Okay, so there's that.
So the coaching would play, right? I mean, who's coaching, right? I mean,
yeah, and you're not gonna. I can say right now, you're not. I don't know anyone who's coached a kid's travel ball team and their town ball team and their school team. Like that's never happened, right? Yeah. So you're gonna have conflicting either views, dialogue, language, whatever, somewhere.
Gotcha.
And some they don't. That's just not their goal to develop. Second, all right, I'll continue on the detriment here is, and we see this a lot in softball. We have girls that play travel softball and then they still play town. And I've never had a problem with town. I think it's cool. And maybe this is one more benefit is the social aspect of it. They get to play with the girls in their town, their friends from school, etc. But again, it really messes with their timing because, at town ball is typically at a lower level of skill. So the pitchers, they don't throw as hard. So they go from a travel ball weekend where girls are throwing, 50 miles an hour up at 12U to town ball where they're throwing 35 miles an hour. And at that age, it's really hard to adjust from within days to that. So it can really mess with their timing, and then that becomes messing with their mechanics, etc. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think that, and then the last part is, of course, if it's the only sport, it's just probably too much for a young body. You could probably answer that better than I can, Kevin, but I think that's where you could potentially run into stress fractures of the lumbar thoracic region. That's what we see. They should be, if they're doing stuff outside of their travel calendar, it wouldn't be a bad idea for that to be a different sport.
How many games do you play in your schedule? Like, what's the kid we're talking about is 13. So how many games does your 13U team play?
Between 25 and 35. And I know it's sort of a big swing, but it depends on tournaments and how far they go in tournaments,
right,
etc. How many rainouts there are. So
there's definitely 20. Let's say there's 30. So your town will play what, 15? So that's 45,
right?
And your school will play at least 10. So that's 55 in a very
condensed amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I look at today. We've got a mutual friend who's at a softball tournament or showcase in New Jersey, and their games are 7:30, 9:30, and 11:30. A triple header, back to back to back to back.
That's a beautiful schedule.
With the same 12 girls.
Yep. Well,
I mean, I'm like, and of course he just texted me. One of the girls, unfortunately, dove for a ball, got caught in a fence, and was just airlifted with a compound fracture of her ankle.
Wow.
That's what I just got.
Well, that's obviously
and that's
commonplace.
Completely that's not. But right. I mean, that's a lot of game. I mean, that's a lot. On the
that's
body.
Nothing for softball. Let me tell you what. So a couple Saturdays ago, our 12-year-old girls were in a tournament. They had a 10 a.m. game, or it might have been 11. I forget what the first one. It was early. No, it was 12. Sorry, it was noon. So it was a 12 o'clock game, then a 5:30 p.m. game, and then a 7:30 p.m. game. And that day got messed up because of rain. So I was at that field. I want the girls there an hour early, which means I'm there an hour and a half, hour 45 early. So I was there at 10:40-ish in the morning. Didn't leave that night, that same facility, until 10:15 p.m. Because again, there were some delays. So it's crazy. And look, it's not uncommon for girls to play up to 6 games in a day. And you get to these big tournaments, and you on Sunday,
you're talking 30, 40, over 40 innings in a day.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's the same girl pitching all of them.
Oof, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's a lot.
So the next question is, in PayU, if you're not on the elite team,
I'm gonna beat that horse.
You like that? What are the chances to moving up to that team?
Oh, this is such a loaded question.
Yeah, big time.
Elite according to whom is my first question.
That's it. So elite according to this organization that we're talking about, that we will not mention, even though we both know who it is.
I think you have to really all right. So I'll answer the question, but first I would advise this person, what's your main goal? Is the main goal to have is it 13 years old?
13, yep.
13-year-olds play on the absolute top team? Is that the goal? Or is the goal for that 13-year-old to play varsity in high school and college? And because
I think that the latter is probably the goal. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's not getting any development at all. That's where these questions are coming from.
So if the latter is the goal, it doesn't matter what team you're on, only other than the sense that, maybe he's getting more in-game experience with the second team, however you want to call it, the B team, right? I mean, that's just, we try not to use those terms, but they get used anyway. So if he's starting, he's getting the lion's share of the innings, and he's getting that in-game experience with the second team where he won't for the quote-unquote elite team, I'd say keep him where he is. Because again, at the end, a lot of kids, and I mean, when I say a lot, I mean like 75%, and I'm not exaggerating. The giant number of those kids that are the elite right now will not be the elite at 15, 16. And there's so many reasons for that. And we've talked a little bit about it here before, but you don't know what any type of player is until they physically mature. When they're all on that same playing level, they're all physically mature. That's also when mechanics really play a super valuable role, because we use the term unsustainable. A kid could be 12, 13 years old using a -8, -10 bat. He's only facing 55 miles an hour, 65 max if you get a real hard thrower. You can swing with your arms and still hit the ball. And if you're physically more physically mature than another kid, you can also hit it far. You cannot swing with your arms when you're facing 80 plus. So those bad mechanics will not translate and carry over to the higher age groups. The proper mechanics will, and those kids that focus on that and get that type of development training ultimately will leapfrog all those kids. And I always say this, look at a program and you should see the wins increase from younger ages to older ages. And if you don't see that, they're not developing players. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They're recruiting the big kids, the big, strong kids at younger ages. They're winning a bunch of 12U tournaments, kudos. And then by the time they get to 15, 16, they're doormats. And so you don't want that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that might lead into the next question she has.
Okay.
So what are the warning signs when you go to try out for said AAU club? Notice I didn't say it. I used AAU.
Oh, attaboy.
So meaning, I'm paraphrasing here, but you can look online and see the reviews. So obviously, is wins later on one of the benchmarks that you want to use, because that's a pretty good one.
Yes, I think that's one you want to use. And also, just have conversations. And I know it might not always be easy because they're trying to sell their program. And look, there are tons of programs out there go like, apps development, that's what we do, when they don't. Right. And by the way, maybe it's not even malicious. Maybe they just don't really understand what that means and truly means. But I think that if you hear a lot of talk about, this team had X amount of wins last year. We went to this tournament and we went really far, and they talk about how good the team is. That may be one of those like warning signs that you might not necessarily think would be a warning sign, because they're just focused on the wrong thing. I know it's cheesy, but we always say, like, when our kids join, we're joining their team. They're not just joining ours, but it's true. And that's what I think what you would want. That's what I would want for my kid, is to put my kid in a position where they've got a team of people that are on his team trying to reach his goals and help him with that. And hopefully with every kid on that team. And then we say, we probably overuse it, right? Ripping on Kevin for pay-per-view, but winning's a byproduct. It is. Winning is a byproduct of proper development. So over time, and that's why I said the team should have more wins as you get older, even though the competition gets better.
Okay. And the last question is, if paraphrasing again, but if this kid was to make a move to another program, they have seen favoritism. Kids getting more instruction, getting more time compared to other kids, and if they switched, would that even make it worse going to another program?
No. I mean, for sure wouldn't make it worse.
Have you guys seen stuff like that? Obviously, I mean,
absolutely. Look, before we started our own program, we worked in other programs, and the main reason we started our program is so that we have every kid in our program gets the same training. It's a curriculum, right? There's actually a curriculum, a syllabus to what we do. And in other programs, it's luck. If you get a good coach who wants to teach his players and has the knowledge to teach his players and has the time to teach his players, etc., and then hopefully has 2 or 3 assistant coaches so you can train in small groups. And then, by the way, that has happened. So I'm not trying to make a mockery of it. I've seen that. Okay. You can luck out and get that coach, but you might not. So if the program isn't dedicated to developing your son or daughter, then you're not in the development program, right? You might just happen to have a good coach. So if you're not getting what you want, and especially in terms of development, you need to go as fast as you can, because every year, again, you're reinforcing that bad swing. You're reinforcing that bad throwing mechanic every single time that you swing a bat, throw a ball, etc. So you want to have that player in the hands of somebody who's going to help correct that. And they're not going to fix them overnight. It's going to take a couple of years, especially, because even when we get a kid at 12 years old, they've taken hundreds and thousands of swings before we met. So, but yeah, I would, that's what I would say, is that it would absolutely not going to make it worse. It's the only time it becomes questionable is when they're like 16, because
there's not much time left, right?
Right. I can only speak for us, but without some rare exceptions, I don't know that we'll have the time enough to get that player to where they want to be. But
that's an honest answer. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those were
all the questions. I love those. Those are great questions, by the way.
Yes.
Those are awesome questions.
Yes, that's a very concerned family about their child who's getting not the best development that he could for the money.
Yeah, I'm saying this not to beat my own chest here, but we had a player from another program. This was a parent who, against the team that we played against, reached out to me, brought his son in, and I got a text after, and it was nice. He said, my son said he learned more in that half hour with you about hitting than he has in the entire 2 years he's been with this other program. And I thought that was obviously a very nice comment to me, but even if it's slightly exaggerated, that should never be. This is a game that you got to learn how to be good at. You need proper coaching, and that's what AAU used to be.
Oh yeah, and just one point that we look at again results. So you said an alarming number of how many teams were in New England that you said to me the other day.
Oh, there was like 4 to 6 back in the late 80s when I was playing.
And how many are there now?
Mid to late 90s.
There's like 1,200.
1,200 teams. So there's 1,200 teams.
Yeah.
There's indoor facilities in every town, pretty much, give or take.
Yep.
Yet no one's coming to New England to draft players still. It's like an anomaly.
That's not true.
It's getting there. Well, your program, we've got a few, but not everywhere.
Well, I'll tell you this.
What do we got? Oh, I should say the draft numbers is proportionally still, New England is still on the kaputs compared to Florida, Texas. No, that's changed?
It's actually high. It's actually getting pretty high. Yeah. And I'll tell you, so, and this goes back to about 2011, 2012, is when the first time ever Massachusetts had more players drafted than the state of Georgia, right? And that's not something that happens all the time, but that was a big deal at the time.
Right.
But it is, and the reason is kids are going out and finding instructors. They're finding, and some of them are even traveling. Some will send their kids to IMG, right, down in Florida. But their residence is still Massachusetts, so they're getting drafted out of Massachusetts. But maybe we'll find an instructor, so they're going and doing the travel ball thing 3 days a week, 4 days a week. But then they're also paying for this instructor, as well. In addition to, and that doesn't make any sense. If you're in a program, you should be getting development every single time that you're in there in some form or fashion, right? Like there's the 3 pillars. There's the skills, strength, and then there's the psych.
Come on.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for answering those questions.
Thanks for asking. Those are awesome questions.
All right, Mr. Producer, what do we got next? We're running probably short on time, so whatever we want.
No, we're good. We get about
10
minutes.
Doing? Okay.
We'll go into your tip of the week, or excuse me, your movement of the week.
All right, let me share my screen here. So my movement of the week is actually a test.
I love this test, by the way.
One of my game tests, which stands for Graded Active Movement Exams. Can you see me, my lovely face there?
Jazz hands. Look at you.
Jazz hands.
Like that Tai Chi guy who says he can beat people without touching them. That's what you look like.
So for those old basketball fans, this is a...
Can't do it with my earphones.
Yes. So this is... I lost it. Okay. So this is what I call my free throw test, and this is the anti-Jamal Wilkes test. So for some people who know who Jamal Wilkes, who used to shoot a free throw with his elbow way out to the side, we don't do that. So this is keeping elbow, wrist, hand, and shoulder in relative alignment as you do this test, because they all should be able to move independently. So most people, my elbow is pointed out slightly, but most people you will get that they cannot keep their arm to their side and it abducts. When we get to the side, which is a better one. So you'll see as I do this, my shoulder rotates backwards in a circle. It does not shrug. The elbow will kind of translate out depending on the articulation between the head of the humerus and the scapula, but from the side, the ball of the humerus should roll backwards. If it shrugs, that this is a precursor to bad things that are going to happen in an overhand throwing athlete. So again, the ball, hence rotator cuff, should rotate that shoulder back in a complete circle and then be able to extend your arm and wrist and elbow. And you'll be surprised how many pitchers cannot do this successfully without abducting their elbow away from their side. And that, I feel, is a precursor. Well, one, that's an impingement, and that's a precursor to future injury for sure.
Percentage-wise, Kevin, what do you see more of in pitchers? Pitchers who cannot keep their elbow in, or pitchers who shrug?
I think they kind of go hand in hand, but it's probably going to be more of the shrug. I mean, the upper trap, especially in your adolescent kids where they're on their Game Boy, the phone, the upper traps are so overutilized. That is the first movement to everything. And the upper trap movement is an absolute killer. Game Boy, whatever, something.
Do we get a time machine? What is
he's down playing with his
sticks. Now, wait a minute. Now, hold on. Look at that. Well, oh, what's that? That's right. That's an iPod.
An iPod?
It certainly is.
That looks like that's a thick one too. Oh my!
Yeah, that's an old one. So there you go.
Well, iPod is like, it's like the future compared to Game Boy. I mean, I played with a Game Boy
this century.
Game Boy was.
What was that? What was that football game that you used to have that you used to play? Like
I still have that.
That thing's awesome.
What is that? Buy those now at. Yeah, Newbury Comics has them. I get the baseball one and the football one. The football.
Those things I used to play.
Are those handheld like Tiger?
Yeah. And then they had one that was head to head, so you'd play with a friend. You're like,
they're just dashes.
Yeah,
Tiger Electronics. I used to have a Batman game.
Things are great.
There you go.
No, the kids have no idea how entertaining those things are.
Right, you play for hours. And the baseball one didn't have like a little baseball stadium almost, wasn't it? Like a little.
Yes, it was like a little bit. It was in the shape of it, but
flashback to the 80s.
No, it was just funny. I think that was funny.
I'm glad we both picked up on that. I was like,
Game Boy.
All right, video. How about I say video? How about I say video games rather than Game Boy?
Well, because Game Boy was Nintendo, and the modern version of that is a full-on console.
I've seen that thing
in a handheld, right? You take it handheld. You take
and
it
you
out.
Can bring it place to place, right?
Yes, it's insane. It's pretty good. My kids have it. All right, so what is the time for?
Everybody's favorite.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Let's find out, guys. Let us find out here. So I will share my screen.
While you're pulling that up, I'm going to explain. So we like to mess around with the why would you do that a little bit. And so this one is not based on the actual drill, but this we thought would be a perfect example of why you don't want to just do drills for the sake of doing drills, and why other things that you should be working on are far more important, like sequence. Okay. So should I just take it away, Ryan? You got the video up. All right. So now, first and foremost, I think that the title on this was PVC pipe for whip, as in cool whip. Okay. So I don't know. Yes. Whip
to contact.
Yeah. Whip to contact. So I don't know exactly what the PVC has to do with creating a whip, other than it's lighter than a bat. You see that his hands are separated. This player in this video, coach, whatever he is in the video, his hands are separated. As a left-handed hitter, and he's going from his load position. He's skipping stance, going right from load position. His hands separated for those that aren't seeing the video. And then he's practicing his swing to contact. Okay. Now, the problem with this is, again, someone might see this drill and go, I'm just going to take half swings with the PVC pipe and get better. No, you won't. The problem here is his sequencing. So if you can watch his front foot, and so for the people just listening, his front foot, which is his right foot, he cannot stay on the inside part of his foot. The second he starts to move, his foot rolls to the pinky toe side. Now that tells me, that I would bet dollars to donuts this guy's a right-handed thrower, because you see this a lot with right-handed throwers who are left-handed hitters. They're bottom hand or right-hand dominant, and so their front side wants to pull away from the ball to rotate rather than turn from the left side into the ball to rotate. And he's pulling way off the ball. His front hip is opening up. His right knee is opening up. Rather than turning. That was the best one he's done, and his back foot didn't move. So there's one where he does seem to turn his left knee first, but his foot doesn't budge, doesn't go with it. So he's kind of getting stuck in the mud there. But again, sequence is so important. If you were to practice the swing that he's showing in here and pulling that front hip open in order to rotate to the ball, you're rotating away from contact. Some term that I made up. It's just directional force, right? You want the force to be in the direction of the baseball. Obviously, you want everything to go into the ball. If you're opening your front side first and you're pulling to a base side, third base for righties, first base for lefties, your directional force is away from the ball. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, you're going to cut off the backside of your swing. Because when the right shoulder lifts, that's going to pull the hands towards first base. And if you can imagine, the end of that bat is not going to cover the outer half of the plate. It's actually going to kind of go to the middle and then immediately towards second and first base. I'm hoping I'm explaining this correctly, but
I like that.
If you're watching the video, you can see what I'm talking about. And Ryan, you go back to that again right here. You'll see when you open the front side, especially the front shoulder, you'll get a lean back. And you see his angle. See his angle there? Can you use the cursor? See the angle I'm talking about right there? Like, no, yeah, the lean back angle, Ryan.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Ready and boom.
Right. So he's leaning back. Right. You shouldn't be leaning back like that. Now, it's is that in and of itself the end of the world? Nope, it's not. But he's getting that because he's pulling first, and that pull is making him lean back this way rather than rotating in and keeping his head on a swivel as I'm doing right now.
And one of the things that we talk about with our players when we see that happening, when they're pulling out their front shoulder and kind of fading away, one of the good telltale indicators, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a good amount of the time, is when that happens, their hands drop as well. So a righty hitter is going to get underneath the ball and pop it up to the right side of the field, first base side, right field side, whatever. Left-handed hitter, this guy right here, opposite, right? That would go to the third base side, shortstop, left field. Getting under it, a lot of like kind of weak pop-ups here.
To the opposite side of the field, that's 100% correct. The other indicator is ground balls, topspin ground balls to the pull side. Yep. So they either get, and so that's what happens is when they feel like they're behind the ball because they're popping up to the opposite side, it's really not. It's that again, that elbow lifts, the barrel drags rather than here. Okay. And so what they instead of adjusting their body and their swing, they adjust the timing. So they get out in front of it. The problem is when you're pulling open like that, you're going to start rolling your wrists way early. And so you get those top spins. So those two indicators, if you're getting a lot of top spin ground balls to the pull side and pop ups to the opposite side, you're flying open.
And my 2 cents, can we roll this back? If you look at his back foot, right there.
Yes.
All of his weight is on his pinky toe.
Yes, it is.
So that's
probably why he can't move.
A complete misnomer or a complete bad thing to do, which we've talked about many times. And if you watch his right knee slam right there into extension on the outside part of his foot, that is no bueno. And again, what athletic move can he? I don't even think you could finish your swing with that.
Agreed.
Mike, do you think that you could continue wrapping the bat around your back from that position? I don't think so.
He'd fall.
And you certainly can't run.
Right.
So this is just one of these. I don't know if this is the high level pattern whip. This whip they keep talking about, but I don't. Yeah, this is.
It doesn't look like an HLP bat path, and it looks like his bat path is not bad. It's actually good. But again, it's the sequence, and you could have a great bat path, but if you're not starting with your lower half first, well, you're not going to get to the ball to begin with because your bat speed's going to be down. So the sequence, you got to, there's a sequence to this, not just in the way the body moves, but how you have to think about it, right? Start from the ground and move up.
And that bat path Mike talks about, you see where he finishes, his arms are almost in like a box here.
Right. Strong, like 90 degrees with the top arm.
Well, then again,
there should be flexion.
Right. And if we talk about, again, what we've talked about, the right arm is in complete abduction away from the ball into upper trap overutilization, which is going to slow everything down.
Yeah, he's too bent. He's like this with his bottom hand, which tells you that he's taking the shoulder and going this way rather than rotating in and then pulling. So, all right. I think we'll beat that to death. But that
some parts we like, some parts we don't. All right.
I like practicing going to contact. That's the only thing I liked. He did not show that, and that's just my opinion because I don't even know if that's what he was attempting to do. But his swing sequence was absolutely off. And again, just another reason to make sure you're thinking when you're picking a video before you show it to your son or daughter, or if you're a player before you go out and try to mimic it. Make sure you understand what the goal is, and then see if they're actually doing that.
All right, good show, gentlemen.
Thank you all for tuning in. It was a fun show. It was actually a really fun show. I enjoy talking. We gotta keep an eye on this injury list too, like we talked about from a couple weeks ago. Maybe next week we'll check in. We'll get the updated number, and I think it's something at this point that we got to touch on every week, at least even if it's just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We gotta touch on. Right?
I mean, the bodies keep piling up. I mean, constantly, every week. Every week there's somebody.
Yep. Okay.
Body count. We'll call it.
All
right,
everyone.
folks.
Have a great